Hello and welcome to the Actual Tech Media EcoCast. My name is Jess and I am excited to be here with you all today. But before we jump into our content, I have some basic information that I want to cover with you. All right, let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console. And we're going to start with the questions window. So if you haven't already said hi, there is a whole audience of cool humans out there, so reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. Now, keep in mind that if you do have any technical issues today, a browser refresh is going to fix just about anything. But if those tech gremlins are clinging on today, no problem. Just throw a comment in the question section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you, so throughout today's EcoCast, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over a live chat, we will also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentations. Now, if we don't get to your question during the live webinar today, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us will be following up after we wrap. All right, next up, there's going to be lots of cool aha moments on the EcoCast today. And if you want to share those with your community, we've made it nice and easy for you. You can use the Twitter button right there on your audience console, and the hashtag for today's EcoCast will be automatically added to your post. All right, our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the handouts tab for some awesome resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection, solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go explore. Now, if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes that we'll be giving away throughout today's EcoCast. I'm going to tell you a bit more about those later on, but a few quick reminders for you all. First, you do need to be here live in attendance at the EcoCast in order to qualify to win a prize, and we will follow up with all of you after we wrap. Now, all winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, if you don't know what those full T's and C's are, that's fine. We've got the full thing for you. Just head on over to that handouts tab, click in, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find them waiting for you there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember is that we love getting all your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much that we actually have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. So in today's EcoCast, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our live sessions. Now, the expert speakers and teams will review all questions asked after we wrap the webinar, which means that even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. If you are a lucky winner here today and you would like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about your big win, and we'll get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have you all here with us live at the EcoCast today, and we want to keep that good feeling going, so let's connect on social media. Reach out and connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and on LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. Now, if you're looking for more awesome content and resources right after we wrap the EcoCast today, be sure to subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and, hey, grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or a coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you'll find a link to do that right in your handouts tab, and you will also be automatically redirected at the end of the webinar. And both you and your coworker or friend could win a prize, and we hold those drawings every month. So be sure to refer a friend because, hey, it could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for all the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link in your handouts tab, fill out a quick application, and the Actual Tech crew will then match you with some vendors that we think you should probably be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you get to choose to join in, like surveys, test runs, new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, you'll chat with great people, and you'll learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply, or hey, send that link to a decision maker on your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you all about one of my favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find out everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, prevent, and recover. This site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. Go check it out and start exploring. All right, I have one more exciting resource I have to tell you about today, and that is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. It's going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books will work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and as I said, they are completely free. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in that handouts tab as well. All right, well, we have covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited to dive in. So let's get going.
Hello and welcome, folks. It is time to dive in on today's topic, getting started with multi-cloud management. I'm excited for today's topic because gone are the days that simply talking about migrating and utilizing cloud storage is enough. Virtually all organizations and consumers are using the cloud in some way, but the question now is how to go about using and managing multi-cloud environments. Today we have Nutanix with us, who have recently conducted a study to look at where industries are at in cloud adoption and how they are managing that learning curve. Not only that, but we have experts here from Scale Computing to discuss industry trends, and both will be talking about the benefits of the cloud, portability, security, and more. So much great information, which will certainly help you keep ahead of the curve in your organization. I'm sure you're all ready and pumped to get started, so we'll go through a few last little bits of housekeeping info, and then I'm going to get our speakers on out here with us. My name is Mackenzie Puddesy, and I'm a moderator here at Actual Tech Media. My friends and fellow moderators Jess Steinbach, Scott Becker, and Keith Ward are here with us on live chat today. Plus, Keith is joining our keynote speaker to kick things off in style. If it's your first EcoCast with me, it is nice to meet you, and thank you for being here. Now, I've got something more than just incredibly valuable information for you today, which I'm sure that's why you're here. But as a little bonus, I've also got some prizes. Today on the EcoCast, you could win one of three $300 Amazon gift cards that will be given away to 3 lucky winners who are here, present, and live with us at the EcoCast. And as mentioned in the housekeeping chat this morning, you can find the full T's and C's linked in the handouts tab if you have any questions about that. That said, we also have a $50 best question gift card, which goes out for each session. So whilst our speakers are presenting today, please do be interactive, ask questions, say hello. And if you haven't said hello quite yet, please do pop a little hello or greeting into the questions section here of your portal. And we'll talk a little bit more about those handouts as they come up, but they're in the same tab. So if you haven't figured that out yet, now is the high time. And hey, with that last little thing, we are ready to rock. Our keynote speaker today is Dan Sullivan. He is a cloud architect, and he'll be setting the stage for today's discussion. He is joined by Keith Ward, who is a fellow moderator, and of course, I'm a big fan of his. He's going to be posing some questions and adding some interesting commentary to this chat with Dan. So with that, Dan, Keith, I'm kicking things over to you.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for being here today and for joining us on this event that has to do with getting started with multi-cloud management. I'm Keith Ward, a moderator with Actual Tech, and I am thrilled to be joined by Dan Sullivan. Now, Dan is a true expert in this field. He is a working cloud architect. He's also an author, an educator, and someone with so much knowledge in this area. So I'm super happy to have him with us. Dan, welcome.
Thanks, Keith. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, why don't we dive right in and kind of set the table for this event today? Getting started with multi-cloud management is a fraught topic for many, many people. So why is that? Why is it so challenging to manage across various clouds?
Well, for starters, cloud is different from on-prem. So if you're coming from an on-prem environment and then working immediately in multi-cloud, you're compounding the transition to cloud with multiple clouds. And clouds have different identity management systems, different ways of logging, different monitoring services that are available. And so oftentimes what you're trying to do is kind of align different services that you need. For example, like identity management is essential and role-based access controls. different clouds will do them in different ways. And they're close enough that we can figure out how to make them work together, but they are distinct systems. They might have different logging formats that you have to keep track of. Also, there's the issue when it comes around things like compliance and cost performance and analysis. It's very hard to integrate a bunch of different components, even from within one cloud, but to try and do that across clouds, it just compounds the problem. So the management challenges that we have just get multiplied based on the number of different clouds that we're working with.
For sure. You had mentioned role-based, access control, identity management, and that kind of leads into the next question. One of the key considerations for any multi-cloud environment, Dan, as you well know, is security. So what are the main things that you have to be worried about when it comes to security? Just there's a lot of things, but the most important things, would you say, what are the most important things would you say are for, that you have to watch when it comes to concerned security in these multi-cloud environments?
Yeah, well, probably the first thing and the most fundamental thing to understand is that when we're in the cloud, we're in a shared responsibility model. So the cloud vendor is going to take care of some things like obviously the physical security around their data centers. They'll also do things like make sure that the operating system images are maybe up to date and patched, but it's our responsibility to control who we grant access to, what levels of access we grant access to. If we're working in an infrastructure as a service environment, then we're going to be controlling things like firewall rules. And there's some fairly low level details, kind of things we'd expect to do if we're on-prem. If you're in a platform as a service or software as a service environment, then it gets even more responsibility is taken on by the vendor, cloud vendor, but we also have responsibilities again around, especially around identity management and access controls and what permissions people are allowed. And importantly, how we log. Identities become like the new perimeter in the sense of where attackers will go. If bank robbers go to the banks because that's where the money is. If you're an attacker and you want to get at someone's HR system and get PII and extract it, and that PII exists in a SaaS provider. And there are different attacks on multi-factors that come into play much more when identity is sort of an easier gateway. So we need to understand the differences between on-prem and cloud and the different types of clouds. But at the end of the day, things like logging and being able to detect threats and be able to sort of hunt and gather details are really important, both for mitigating security instances and also things like compliance and being able to report on what we're doing from a security perspective.
And I would also maybe add to that zero trust is a good mindset to have in these environments. So, of course, you assume that there's bad actors and you make them prove that they're not dangerous before you allow them access. Is that a good idea in these environments?
Oh, absolutely. Especially because, basically we've lost the perimeter. So there is no perimeter. So we don't know, we don't have other gateways, like an easy gateway, like a perimeter check. And so things like zero trust, where we look at, who's logging in, where are they logging in from, what device are they using? And does this fit patterns that we've seen before? Is this anomalous? So so the idea of zero trust is really important. And also every activity, just because I authenticated and checked my authorizations 5 minutes ago doesn't mean they haven't changed. So zero trust also means, checking constantly. Every operation needs to be checked before it's allowed.
So, given the complexity that we're talking about and the fact that these can be multi-step, multi-stage implementations, do you have any advice on whether it's a good idea to start smaller and kind of build as you go, or should you do a huge, wide-ranging, comprehensive implementation right at the beginning, and why or why not?
Yeah, the sort of the big bang approach, do it all at once, is really hard because you have to plan so much. And even those of us that have worked in cloud for years, we're still constantly learning. Software is constantly changing. So the idea that you can formulate a plan that will be in place and valid 3 months from now, it's pretty hard to imagine it's not going to need change. So I'm a big advocate for doing like start with a proof of concept, something low risk. If it were compromised, you're not going to lose PII or some kind of proprietary information. And that allows you to learn. What are the logging mechanisms that we have available to us? What information is available to us? How do we detect threats? It allows us to ramp up our learning at the same time we're ramping up the risk. So I'd say we want to keep those two sort of closely coupled. Our skill level and the risk that we're starting to take on. And the more skills we have, the more risk we can take on, and that comes with that kind of incremental rollout.
Great. Kind of learn as you go, and then
Yes.
build those skills too. So, we've been talking a lot about complexity. That's kind of implied in something like this. So, one of the areas, along with security, that's the most fraught, I would say, for companies when it comes to multi-cloud environments is compliance. The government regulations are only getting longer. The lists are getting bigger that you have to comply with. So what are some of those challenges that organizations face in compliance for multi-cloud settings?
Well, yeah, boy, it is really multifaceted. I mean, with compliance, first of all, we need to understand whatever the regulations that we are subject to. So if you're in multi-cloud, you're probably in multi-region, so you may have multiple geographic sort of political based regulations that we need to deal with, as well as maybe industry specific regulations. We have to have mechanisms for compliance. So for example, we have to be able to demonstrate we have maybe lifecycle management policies in place to keep records for whatever period of time we're required to keep them. Those policies may require different implementations. Like if you dig into the JSON structure that describes the policy, it's going to look different in one cloud than another. So it'd be really nice if you could consolidate, have a single source of truth, which then maps to cloud specific implementations. We also need to be able to report. So it's not just report, Dan Sullivan has this set of permissions in this cloud, but we have to be able to say, this service account, which is created in this cloud is tied to this identity in this cloud. So being able to look at assets and identities across clouds and being able to report them is also difficult. So I'd say it comes down to this idea, not only are we multiplying the number of things that we have to keep track of, and we have possibly different systems for tracking them, the integration of those multiple components now adds yet another kind of factor to the complexity of this. So anything that reduces that complexity, that gives you more of a unified single pane of glass approach to managing identities or logging or compliance reporting, anything like that is just a real boon. It will definitely help.
Absolutely. And when you're talking about multi-cloud management, if you're just kind of getting your feet wet, all of those considerations are so important. Dan, I want to thank you for a great overview of the topic here, and I hope that our attendees are looking forward to a great event around this. And thank you so much for your time and insights today, Dan.
All right. Well, you're welcome. It was great to talk with you, Keith. Thank you.
Well, Keith, Dan, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. That gave us plenty to think about when approaching multi-cloud management. That idea that multi-cloud can mean compounding difficulty, securing and managing data and user access, detection, and more, well, can be a little scary. However, we can also see that there's some compounding benefits. Very modern day, right? Everything accelerating and becoming more complex. We're on this acceleration curve. And for this reason, I'm glad we have industry experts here to speak to the solutions and strategies at our disposal. As for all of you out there in the audience, hopefully you enjoyed that. I do have a little test to make sure you are alive, awake, and ready to hear from our presenters today, which is why I've put up a poll for you to answer before I introduce our first speaker. Take a second to answer this poll about the timelines in which you're thinking to implement some of the strategies and softwares that we're going to talk about today. Is it right away, less than 6 months, maybe 12 to 24? You've got a longer timeline, or maybe you're not sure, and that is okay too. You're here figuring it out, getting a sense of what can be done and what things you can utilize, and that is how you're going to do it. Now, alrighty, I'm going to change from the poll, so it's your last second here. Thank you for being interactive today, and I do want to remind you to ask questions during the session. We do have our speakers here for Q&A after the fact, so any questions you answer, we can hopefully get to as many as possible. Now, as mentioned earlier on today's EcoCast, we've got two fantastic teams presenting. It'll fly by, but be jam-packed with valuable information. As always, am I right? So let's dive in. The Nutanix team is here to get this EcoCast kicked off. So without further ado, please welcome from Nutanix, Maggie Smith, Senior Solutions Manager. Maggie, the stage is yours, and let me know if you're ready to rock.
Yes, I just got unmuted. I was getting a little nervous there.
Don't worry,
Thanks
I got
for
you
having me.
covered.
Well, welcome everyone. I want to go to the topic on hand and how we've kind of created the title for this presentation. And I'm reflecting a lot on what Dan was just talking about, because when you're looking at cloud, you've got to really look at it as multi-cloud. And cloud may contain the data and the applications and so forth that are still residing on your premise. So when you step back and say, gosh, how am I going to get my arms all around this? We say, start to think about it from a smart perspective, an intelligent perspective, and build a plan in place that adds that intelligence so you can get the value immediately from all of the clouds you're supporting. And one thing that I like to do is kind of take a step back and think about, how did we get here? Why are there so many clouds that I have to choose from? And how do I get my arms around this? Well, we all know the cloud advantage from scale, from resource ability, from the fact that it's very easy to add resources when needed, when you need to burst and so forth. And many of the customers tell us there were several use cases they were looking at of why they approached and using a cloud and why they approached really a multi-cloud perspective. One, it gives them time in terms of their digital transformation projects. More and more of our customers are putting on online portals and online applications that they serve to their customers or their line of business holders and their stakeholders. And they needed to operate that in a very efficient environment. As I've mentioned, I think Dan said as well, it's so easy to scale. And it's so easy to grow on an on-demand basis. So if you have a situation where you need to what we call burst into the cloud for seasonality purposes, for perhaps you've added a new company and you want to have virtual desktops available on day one, you need that ability to quickly get those resources so you can do those activities. Everything that we just talked about in terms of managing risks and costs and maintaining the compliance you need is looked at and looked at very carefully from an intelligent perspective as you start to build out what you're doing in the cloud and resourcing that cloud. And many of our customers say, gosh, it is so easy. I just take a credit card out and now I've got more storage or more servers or more application need. And I just do that in minutes rather than getting a purchase order together and getting it approved and so forth to bring something on premise. So these are the things that our customers tell us of why they're moving into a cloud environment. But I think Dan said it so well. If you really look at this crazy slide I've built together, it really is summarized of the fact that every single cloud brings its own challenges that you need to think about from an intelligent perspective. And the one I always drill down into is data gravity. Think about this. As you put applications up in the cloud, that data that application needs goes right with it. And that data may not be something you may want to not put in the cloud. It may not be legally allowed to put it in the cloud, or it may not be something that your organization wants you to put in the cloud to meet compliance purposes. So there's all kinds of things to think about as you're adding applications and making sure you have data scale across these multi-clouds. Everything else I think you could identify with. I need to have better visibility, and certainly the topic we're talking about today is multi-cloud management. So how do I manage all of those clouds from a single viewpoint? How do I provision my clouds from a single viewpoint? Each one of these is different in how they look at cloud management and cloud provisioning. And so these are things to think about from an intelligence perspective of really how to get your arms around that and make that happen. So many of our customers come to us and say, look, I've just been handed a cloud mandate. What does that mean? Well, it means that any new IT project or existing IT projects need to consider a cloud deployment first. And you better have a good rationale of why you want to put it back on premise before you come to management or the stakeholders say, why wouldn't this go into cloud? And what we're hearing is this cloud mandate challenges really comes up with a lot of challenges on their own. One of which, over and over again, we hear from customers, I am trying to build an application into the cloud I've chosen. I need to refactor it. I need to reassemble it. I need to re-architect it. And as a consequence, I'm going to share with you some stories that we've heard from customers. It takes a lot longer than anticipated. I'm going to get to the skill gap in a minute because I'm going to tell you a couple of stories. And the other thing I think Dan hit on very well is there's lack of portability. I mean, sure, you've built out a native cloud application using containers and virtualization tools, but many clouds offer some specific services that are unique to them. And that's one thing we talked about to customers is making sure you don't build yourself into one cloud that can't be ported over to another very easily. So think about how you want to support multi-clouds, not only from a management perspective, but intelligently deploy the applications you want to put up there. Now, the skill gap is something we hear over and over again. I'll give you a little plug. We're hosting our user conference .next in Barcelona this year in May, and we've got a deal right now running 25% off registration. So I just wanted to put that out there because the story I'm about to tell you is what I heard last year at .next at our Chicago site. And I was behind two gentlemen in line at the lunch line, and they were talking about the need to deploy and hire cloud architects. And what they talked about is, oh my God, how are you doing with that? They are expensive. They are scarce. I find one that's qualified in one cloud, but I want to go to Azure now. Perhaps he was qualified in AWS, and now I need to hire somebody who's more qualified in Azure, and I have to go out on again and look for that. So it requires some very specialized IT services to really get the value you need out of the cloud that are scarce, that are expensive. And what I heard from these two gentlemen that have multiple offers on the table when they go to hire them. So things to think about as you are handed a cloud mandate. How do I get my arms around the rehosting process? How do I get my arms around the portability? And how do I hire good people to make this happen? So our research, and this is from our actually last year's annual cloud index, and you're going to get the latest copy, I think is one of the handouts we're going to give you at the end, the Enterprise Cloud Index, which was just published. Last year, we went and asked customers, what's really the most important thing you have in terms of your cloud operating model? One place to manage everything, just all about multi-cloud management. 74% of the customers surveyed said they're expected to leverage more than one IT infrastructure in the next 1 to 3 years. And that IT infrastructure could mean cloud, a public cloud. It could be what's remaining on-premise and what's still being managed on-premise. It could be what's going on at the edge where they're collecting machine data and they need to manage that edge infrastructure and that edge deployment. And I should mention, it could be also service providers that are helping you manage your data center from their site. So all of that they have to manage and have views into and visibility into the deployments and how well it's being managed. 94% of them said, I want one single unified place to manage my applications and data across all of these environments. Well, that's nirvana. And we from Nutanix believe we have a way for you to get there, which we're going to talk about during this presentation. So we call this a hybrid multi-cloud. And what are the essential characteristics? This is our position. If you want to be successful in multi-cloud management, start thinking about this from a hybrid perspective. I had a manager, and you guys will probably all relate to this story. He would turn to me and he would, I'd come to a new presentation or a new idea, a new project, and he would say, what's the risk of this in terms of our existing operation? And I'd, well, this, that, and the other. He said, Maggie, remember I've told you about the clinging vine theory. You never let go of that vine that's in your left hand while you're reaching with your right, or if you're left-handed, the opposite. You never let go of that existing vine until you have the other one firmly in hand. And that's what we suggest to customers, is start to look at how your operation is running that's on-premise behind a private cloud and how you can duplicate that and replicate that and extend it up into a public cloud and or a service cloud, a service provider cloud. So you need to think about it as one single platform that uses the consistency of the same constructs, the same services, and most importantly, the same skill sets, so you don't have a cloud architect managing each individual cloud. It should allow you to move the applications, and remember the data gravity issue that I talked about, the data that goes with them, the respective licenses that's needed to run that application with ease, all based on your current business requirements. You don't want to take another 18 to 24 months to have to reconstruct that and refactor that in the application. That might be a parallel project, but with cloud mandates, you often have to move fast. And getting back to multi-cloud management, managing the existing data center, the edge, and your public cloud as one single entity. And that's what Nutanix calls a hybrid multi-cloud environment. So there's lots of value derived from a hybrid multi-cloud area or environment and infrastructure. Well, we have reports on this that show you how you can improve the return on investment by reducing total cost of operations and get a very significant payback when you deploy a multi-cloud management and multi-cloud environment this way. One of the things we've also learned, and this is really specific to any Europeans that we have because there's a lot of sustainability laws now in place, is how to reduce your carbon footprint. And we've had the ability with this approach to help our customers reduce their carbon footprint so they can meet sustainability laws, specifically those that are emerging in the United States and more importantly in Europe. And what it gives you also is the agility to run faster and to get things done faster and get things to your shareholders faster with a reduced infrastructure cost. Remember, you may be deploying them up in the cloud where you have scale. You might open up new revenue streams and growth that will help and assist the shareholders and line of business owners that you support. And most importantly, it gives you productivity to your application developers. You said perhaps set up applications that need to be refactored into a native cloud perspective and building a native cloud environment and using things like Kubernetes and container management in order to help those applications be built that much faster. That takes time. And you have to have that cloud mandate done and you have to start showing results. And that's why we think about this from a perspective of one single operating model that goes from on-premise to edge and into public cloud. So the Nutanix Cloud Platform is, of course, where we'd suggest you start. This is a very hardened stack that's been in market now for over 15 years now, I think, that we've been in market. And it provides you a lot of solutions and tools to help you manage the operations of a multi-cloud environment. Anything from your enterprise applications that's supporting your database and run a business, to the modern applications you're building to move into the cloud, to having analysis done on those applications, how well they're performing, of course, the database structure itself, and managing those databases where they sit, regardless of edge, cloud, or on-premise, and the desktops that you're managing and pushing out every day to your virtual users. And within this hardened stack, we provide management solutions. We provide federated solutions that look after that entire cloud as one single entity. We have fleet management with Kubernetes. Actually, it's a little further along. It's actually moving into some very specific new tools that are coming out from Nutanix that we will be announcing at our next conference. And of course, data governance and making sure you're meeting compliance laws as well as the privacy laws that many countries enforce. And all of this, of course, at a lower level, we're managing the storage and all of the files that you have in terms of managing that regardless of where they sit. So whether they're on-premise, or whether at the edge, or in the cloud itself, we have a unified storage approach to help you manage all of that. Now we do all of this, we extend everything to the cloud through a product called Nutanix Cloud Cluster, which basically is the extension arm of taking this stack and moving it into the cloud of your choice. Now, today we're supporting AWS and Azure as our supported clouds, when I think we're probably hitting about 80% of market. That's mainly what our customers are telling. But I'll give you a hint. We are looking at additional clouds to support with Nutanix Cloud Clusters and give you this intelligent promise that we've been talking about by deploying Nutanix Cloud Platform in a variety of different environments, including public clouds. So how does that work? Well, Nutanix Cloud Cluster, if you start and look at this diagram from the left, takes the Nutanix Cloud Platform stack of things like Nutanix Cloud Infrastructure, which is the basic stack itself of running things in a hyper-converged environment, Nutanix Unified Storage, which supports the management of all the storage you may be operating within premise as well as cloud, and Nutanix Database Services that look after the provisioning, the backup, the everything you need to do with a database, including new versions that are coming out to support those specific databases. And then, of course, it supports all of the services that you probably are using today from the cloud provider you've selected, whether it's AWS or whether it's Microsoft Azure. But the most important thing is it gives you time and speed. we've heard from customers that it's 60% faster to deploy applications and data to the cloud with this approach, using Nutanix Cloud Platform and Nutanix Cloud Clusters. And we have many of our customers just doing that. They recognize that they want to take some time and build out a native cloud application to take advantage of some of the services and performance that the cloud provides. But at the same time, they simply have to deliver results. And so we give them a faster on-ramp to the cloud as they have that parallel project underway. So you can deploy without compromise. With this approach, there's no cloud lock-in. You can extend it to Azure. You can extend it to AWS. You're not locking into a specific cloud supplier. We can allow you to, and we've talked about, allow you to leverage some of the management and cost governance solutions that we have. So you know what you're spending every month in the cloud. You may have a VM that suddenly went rogue and somebody forgot to shut it down, and suddenly you have a bill you didn't anticipate from one of the cloud providers. That's cloud governance that we supply with this service. And we have native integration with cloud networking. It sets up all the networking that you need in order to make this happen. So there's a real key advantage of the approach we take in building out a hybrid multi-cloud with Nutanix. So we talked a lot. This whole topic is about multi-cloud management. So we have one pane of glass called Nutanix Cloud Manager that looks after all of this in a federated manner and allows you to operate, use, but most importantly, govern the use of the multi-clouds you're supporting. Going back to the notion that perhaps a developer left a VM on while he or she was writing new code and forgot to turn it off, and suddenly that's clicking up on your cloud resources. So it gives you the intelligence you need in order to manage that cloud. It also has some self-service capabilities, so you can provision cloud services as you need. The cost governance we've talked about in managing how you spend your cloud and how you optimize that spend. And built into the Nutanix Cloud Platform are integrated services that protect the customer and protect the data that's residing across a multi-cloud environment. So the value to you is really cost and time. You can get a faster on-ramp to the cloud and also at the same time rein in some of the costs that you're experiencing with the cloud spend. You can only need to buy what you may want to buy. For instance, if you go to cloud today, many of the pricing models are what we call t-shirt sizes. That forces you perhaps into over-provisioned resources. I don't need that many servers. I don't need that much memory. So we help you with Nutanix Cloud Clusters build out all of the resources you need and only what you need. And we help you save money. We help you understand what's being spent in the cloud and deliver that backend report so you can take action on it. And you can be resilient with our cloud services. We have built-in security services that help you protect the data and keep the bad guys out, regardless of where that cloud deployment is, by using Nutanix Cloud Clusters and Nutanix Cloud Platform. So let me tell you a little story. This is an international bank that we've used. I beg your pardon, we've been servicing for quite some time. They've been a long-term customer. They've asked us not to name them. And in fact, they were considering going to an only cloud perspective. They just wanted to get out of the data center business. And they were ready to start deploying and taking out Nutanix. So we went to them. We said, okay, we recognize you have a cloud-first strategy. You don't want to be managing data centers anymore, but let's help you with this approach called Nutanix Cloud Clusters. And we recognize the fact that this is the only way I'm going to get the digital transformation I need. And they signed a multi-billion-dollar contract with AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud Platform, GCP. Guess what? After 18 months, they haven't migrated one workload. And the biggest workload they were looking after is virtual desktops and bringing out desktops to the banking the banking employees. How they resolved their dilemma? Well, through our hybrid multi-cloud approach with Nutanix Cloud Clusters, they had one management plane and really most importantly, one common skill set to manage their deployment. They also used one licensing model. So everything they were using today was Citrix for their virtual desktop deployments, transferred to the cloud. And we simplified and helped them with some of the third-party integration services they had. And we helped them with this through professional services that Nutanix provided. But most importantly, we gave them some common best practices to follow in terms of management, deployment, provisioning, and what the results really speak to themselves. In 6 months, they had 2,000 users using their virtual desktops. In 8 months, they had 6,000. So you see how this is just adding to itself over and over again, exponential deployment. And their target was to have 60,000 users in 18 months. Now, remember where they were coming from. They hadn't done anything. They couldn't get anything up there. They couldn't get that gold image that they needed in order to distribute virtual desktops through the cloud. And that's what we helped them achieve. This is another story I want to talk to you about. This is actually Penn National Insurance in a similar situation. They wanted to scale out their virtual desktop infrastructure as needed. So on occasion, if they needed to move applications, we call that bursting into the cloud. If they needed to rescale their virtual desktop deployment in the cloud, they could easily do that with Nutanix Cloud Cluster. And you can see Dan's perspective here. They were finally able to get away from inefficient capital procurement model. Remember, I told you how to go to the boss, get something signed off, get the purchase order. Oh, gosh, I hope the vendor is in our vendor list so I can go ahead and move that purchase order quickly. They had a really easy procurement model now to use, which is what one of the many benefits a cloud provider provides. And as a result of that, they deployed a new cluster on AWS in 45 minutes and had Citrix VDI up and running in less than 2 hours with this model. One common operating model and one common operating plane, management plane to manage all of those resources. Now, let's just talk a little bit about native cloud application. We had the bank that was trying to just put up a gold disk, what we call them in desktop land, a gold disk that could be used to deploy all of their virtual desktops from the cloud. Well, this is what we've learned from customers. When you start to get into this, you have to think about how do I build out application dependency, all that data gravity that we talked about. Well, that's about 30% usually longer than it takes in what you originally estimate. How do I refactor the application to take full advantage of cloud services? Well, that usually takes about 50% more time. And how do I manage all of this? How do I set up the network's constructs and everything I need in order to hit the cloud running? That takes additional 20% of the time. So here we are at a time cycle to build out one native cloud deployment and one native cloud application deployment up to 24 months. And what we have, I have a couple quotes from customers. We move these applications to public cloud and suddenly the performance suffered. We didn't have the networking set up right. We weren't running it properly, perhaps on bare metal, and we weren't getting the performance we need. And we've already spent a lot of money and now have poor user satisfaction. And another customer told us it took 12 months to move 2 applications to deploy as a native cloud service and cost us $1 million per application. We've got over 600 apps we want to move. So you kind of think of that perspective and thinking about what I said about the fast on-ramp to the cloud. Well, Forestry Fortified did the same thing. They wanted to move their entire data center, and this is a UK agency that manages all the public lands in Scotland. They wanted to move their entire data center, and they wanted to move it to the cloud fast. They wanted to get out of the data center business. And what they found is it was a win-win the whole way with Nutanix, as Nick explains. They were able to move the data center to Microsoft Azure without the time, effort, and expense of refactoring and re-engineering all of these clouds because they kept that common operating model that originated at their data center. Remember that clinging vine? Don't let go of that vine until you got the other one fully in your right hand or your left hand, depending on your handedness. And that's what they saw. They were able to quickly reduce their data center footprint and continue to do that since they've deployed Nutanix Cloud Clusters with Nutanix Cloud Platform. So a couple of closing remarks. Why Nutanix for hybrid multi-cloud success? Well, we give you 53% more efficiency in your infrastructure, and simply by deploying faster on the cloud. And that was validated by the Enterprise Strategy Group in about 2 years ago with a joint report we wrote. As you've seen from these experiences, they were able to build out this hybrid multi-cloud in hours versus days and weeks. And they were able to save a lot of money in terms of what many of our customers that are using today, a 3-tier approach in terms of managing applications on-premise. By moving to hyperconvergence and then moving into cloud, they were able to save a lot of money. And up to 60% faster from many of our customers in bringing out a new application into the cloud. And portability. You don't have to relicense everything. You now have the same licenses you're using on-prem that you can move into the cloud and not have to spend more money. So this is a key advantage of what we provide with this environment. So Try it yourself. We've got a test drive we'd like you to try. It's at Nutanix.com/one-platform and choose Nutanix Cloud Clusters. And you can take a look at this. There's a lot of different things you can test drive from that menu. Nutanix Cloud Clusters is probably a good place to start to see how you can get going on that. And come to Barcelona in May. 25% off registrations. We've got a jam-packed agenda about how to deploy a multi-cloud environment successfully and easily. And you'll be hearing from customers that have done it. You'll be hearing from engineering to tell you how to do it. And you're going to be like-minded yourself with people that are trying to do this today. So the couple of call to actions for you, as well as some literature that we'll be giving to you at the end of the conference. And with that, I turn it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maggie. That was great. This vine analogy, I'm definitely going to use this in the future, if you don't mind.
No, gosh, I use that all the time. And, if I ever run into this manager again, he'll say, Maggie, you still remember the Vine trial? Okay.
There's something about it where you're like, it's so visual, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna fall. Like it's kind of obvious once it kind of clicks. So that's great.
Yeah.
Let's dive into maybe one or two questions. We are kind of short on time. Thank you for everyone in the audience who threw your questions in. I do have a poll up here. The poll, this is essentially your wish list, your easy button, what additional information you would like from Nutanix about the Nutanix solution. Feel free to hit that now, and then you'll get whatever you're looking for handed to you expressly after the EcoCast. And with that, Maggie, are you ready to field a question or two?
Absolutely. Please.
Okay, I have a question here about licensing. So it says, does licensing Nutanix HCI software for cloud deployments add additional costs? I know you talked a little bit about, costs and saving money. So we have
if you're not using Nutanix today, for sure. Yeah, you do need to license our stack. That's why we're in business. We want to help you make that happen. And then by licensing Nutanix Cloud Cluster as that licensing model, that allows you to extend that into the cloud. And, I hear that a lot from customers. Oh my gosh, you're charging me again. Well, a couple of things. It pays itself back very quickly. In fact, we have data that says if you're running about, 200 VMs, which is just one application, 200 instances of this application, you start to save money. And we also we found that customers, and this is specifically both AWS and Azure, because we're a service in their cloud, you can start to use the commitment that you've made to those. Maybe you signed a year contract and you've got cloud commits that you need to burn down. You can use those to license Nutanix Cloud Cluster to make this happen. So there's a lot of different ways to license this and save money.
Amazing. Just to follow up, someone had asked if there's kind of a guardrail system or process built into Nutanix to kind of cap costs or make sure they're observed.
Well, of course, there's license management. You do need to, be licensed to run the software both in the cloud as well as regardless of where you're deploying it, whether on-premise at edge. So there are some guardrails. We do ask you to respect our license management. Let me think. We talked about cost governance, and one of the things that we really try hard is to make sure we're giving you the information you need in order to manage cloud costs. So you don't have perhaps rogue VMs, as I call them, and perhaps a developer or two left them on, forgot to turn them off during a pilot phase, that are just cranking up resources and spending down your cloud commits. So these are things that we provide with analysis in our cost governance solutions and what we supply within Nutanix Cloud Manager. So that's something you can license with Nutanix Cloud Manager as part of the stack.
Amazing. Okay, I'm going to just ask you this one kind of final question here. If someone does want to learn more, I know you talked about that test drive. Are there any other places that they should go or any key takeaways in terms of why Nutanix before I let you go today?
Sure. First, join us in Barcelona. Take a test drive. Visit www.nutanix.com. And you learn all about our hybrid multi-cloud approach. And I think, a couple things that I want to leave with you behind is the expediency to cloud. That is something I hear over and over again. It is just taking too long to get this application written. And once we show them the fact of how quickly we can help you get that application through just deploying on the cloud, you've seen the customer stories that I've told you about that were able to do things faster. And you still can do native applications in parallel. You're just meeting your cloud mandate that faster as you start to build out native applications to go into cloud. So that's certainly a way to save time. And when you save time, you save money.
Amazing. I love that. Efficiency. Beautiful. Well, I don't know if I'll see you in Barcelona, but maybe I'll have to look into this. So,
All
but I
right.
do thank
Sounds
you
good.
so much for being here today.
And thank you for having me. Glad to be
My
here.
absolute pleasure. All right. We'll see you next time. Alrighty. For those of you who did ask questions but didn't get them answered today, do not fret. We will have everything passed on to the Nutanix team, and they will reach out to make sure your questions get answered after the EcoCast. Again, thank you, Maggie, for being here. That was fantastic. There is a handout in the Handouts tab, so you can go click that now. It links over to it's an IDC info brief, Thriving in a Multi-Cloud World by Nutanix. Go check that out. You're definitely going to want to see it. And of course, check out anything else in the Handouts tab from today. The different PDFs and URLs in there are definitely worth a read, or maybe save them if you don't have time to take a look today. With that, I do have the first of our 3 gift cards to give away. This is an Amazon gift card for the value of $300. And the first one here is going to Randall Kaiser from Michigan. A big congrats to you, Randall. Reminder, you do need to be present at the webinar to win. And of course, we'll reach out after the fact to help you claim your prize. So congratulations again. Now, next up on the docket, we have the amazing Scale Computing team. Some of you probably will recognize this name, David Demlo. He is the Vice President of Product Strategy, and always good to see a familiar face here on the EcoCast. With that, again, send in as many questions as you can. I know we can't always answer all of them, but we do have that best question gift card going out for each session. And of course, we just want to make sure that you get the information you're looking for here today. And with that, I think, David, are you ready to take the floor and kick things off here?
I am ready. Yeah, thank you very much. And thanks everyone for joining.
Take it away.
All right. So hi, I'm Dave Demelo. I'm the Vice President of Product Strategy at Scale Computing. We're going to talk about, obviously, multi-cloud management, but really focus on the application side of things and how to centrally manage and deploy applications and infrastructure fleets from public cloud out to highly distributed edge environments, which adds some interesting complexities. To kind of set the stage, we're focusing a lot on the cloud component piece, but really want to focus on, the whole distributed computing spectrum from, edge clouds to obviously public cloud, your core data center, private cloud, regional data center. One of the things that's we're seeing is, particularly as applications are refactored, the concept of an application running in a place, figuring out, oh, this application should live in the cloud, or this application is in the edge, is almost going away to where, we're finding distributed applications that have, data ingestion and analytics and inference pieces that run out close, to an edge or close to people or things or devices. And then, centralized, data lakes that are providing, long-term analytics, refining AI models, things like that. And so, we're really trying to, focus on that as the ultimate deployment platform for building applications, for deploying applications, and that there'll be individual pieces from legacy virtual machines to new cloud native type solutions that will get deployed and then ultimately moved between clouds, between locations as needs change. So as an introduction to Scale Computing, our overall solution that we're going to talk about is Scale Computing Platform. And it is, a platform for running applications in any locations, from on-premises to distributed edge, to data center, to private, to public cloud, and running any types of applications. So, everything from, your virtual machines that, have been the old faithful for years and years, to applications that have been, refactored, distributed in containers, Kubernetes, that have unique characteristics on their own. And, we also see, providing unique capabilities and services to different classes of users. And, this is kind of a new thing. So many of you, I imagine, are, represent the infrastructure teams, and you're used to a particular set of interfaces, centralized control plane for the infrastructure, for deploying applications, automation tools, things like Ansible, for example, to let you manage that infrastructure, deploy applications, maybe even reach into other infrastructure components and so forth. And do that across multiple locations. One of the things about these tools and centralized fleet management is that ability to see the entire enterprise in multiple locations in one place. what we're seeing increasingly is a new set of demands coming to us as an IT supplier, coming to you as the infrastructure team, from, for lack of a better term, from the applications team that's responsible for building these applications, refactoring these applications, updating, patching, or taking applications that maybe were originally written to run in a cloud-based Kubernetes cluster, but now have components that, due to, we heard the term earlier, data gravity, need to be portions moved out to particular locations, whether it's for compliance reasons to keep the data private and secure, whether it's for performance reasons, so on and so forth. And so they need to be able to view this entire distributed environment, that's distributed computing spectrum that I talked about, through the same set of tools. And so we want to enable that in a lot of different ways. But one of the key ways is we want to be able to integrate with tools that in many cases are already being used. And so we see a number of customers, for example, and these are just examples. We'll go through a bunch of different cloud providers, want to kind of give some blueprints to how we see hybrid cloud integration being done. And these are things that, you can go out and try, and probably are doing many of them already. So we'll kind of dive in, but most of these, again, are examples, apply to different cloud providers, but fall into kind of two categories. One is extending on-premises infrastructure and applications into public cloud. In this case, Azure, but could be others. So extending storage, extending compute, extending networking, so that applications that need to run on premises can tap into resources like excess storage, can like machine model updating and training and so forth, for those applications that are generally edge centric or deployed on premises. Leverage and extend using cloud resources. And then the other often comes into centralized management from some type of centralized cloud resource. The first thing, and I think Dan mentioned it right off the bat, identity and access control, RBAC, role-based access control, is just a huge thing. And, we see that anymore just, as a de facto being cloud-based. So whether that's, synchronizing with existing on-premises, Active Directory, other security services, using things like, Azure ID, Entra ID for centralized control of cloud-based authentication and management, not just for those cloud-based resources, but extending that out to on-premises is really one of the key design patterns. In the case of our solutions, so we've implemented OpenID Connect, so you can fully utilize something like Azure Entra ID as your, to provide role-based access control to any system or components within your fleet, or the applications leverage capabilities like obviously multi-factor authentication and so on and so forth. And we offer that throughout our entire product line, from the on-premises HyperCore piece to our centralized fleet management product. One of the other patterns we see is leveraging services like Azure Arc for servers, and we'll talk about equivalents on other clouds, where you can actually deploy management agents out that have the ability through the Azure portal to connect to on-premises systems, resources, applications, and provide centralized management of those infrastructure services. In this case, basically the same way you would get tooling if you were deploying those applications on the cloud. So this is a great tool if you have lifted and shifted, an application previously, you were running it up in Azure, but now you need to move it back out to on premises for, any number of reasons. You can do that and still maintain the same kind of, update policy, centralized policy, log analytics, all the things that you were used to running that application in Azure. And then, also leverage additional capabilities, like being able to access remotely. And I've got a couple of screenshots here to give you some examples. So this is my Azure Arc portal. You can see here I've got a whole bunch of machines that are connected into Azure Arc. These are actually on-premises servers. You can see all different kinds of operating systems from Windows, Linux, and these are all running in multiple locations, but I have the ability to see everything in one place, set policies, manage updates, deploy applications, remotely, securely access those for administrative, for troubleshooting, so I can drill down in, connect into those systems centrally. And it, again, provides the comfort and the kinds of service and accessibility that you would expect with cloud-based applications, but lets you place those applications or components wherever they make most sense for your organization. Another similar kind of services when you get into cloud native, there's also a service called Azure Arc for Kubernetes. Lets you deploy on-premises Kubernetes clusters, K3s, OpenShift, whatever type of Kubernetes you want to deploy, and then connect it back into the Azure control plane. You can run any CNCF certified Kubernetes. In this case, you get the same benefit that your application developers get in the cloud, where they don't care what the underlying hardware is. They assume a certain amount of resiliency. In this case, the on-premises infrastructure can handle and provide all those things that normally would be provided by the cloud, but your developers get the same access as if they were, for example, deploying applications to an Azure AKS cluster running in the cloud or running in another public cloud, for example. Another very common design pattern is, as I mentioned, to extending on-premises storage capabilities with backup, archiving, synchronization. In the case of Azure, there's a service called Azure File Sync, which lets you basically get infinite storage capacity on premises. It looks and acts like it's local. You can maintain a on-premises local cache for recently created access data. You can also automatically archive older files or synchronize those up to Azure storage, so you have easy accessibility from the cloud. We also see customers that use capabilities like this to actually synchronize data between multiple edge locations. Maybe they publish it out to their Azure file services in the cloud, and the data pushed there gets automatically distributed out to any number of edge locations that need access to that. But a very easy hybrid cloud services where you've got Azure-based cloud storage, you've got on-premises, local, fast, low latency data access that into many types of hybrid cloud scenario. Switching over to AWS, their equivalent service to like the Azure Arc would be AWS Systems Manager, where you can see here you can very easily register your on-premises systems. And again, this can be tens, hundreds, thousands of locations, depending on the nature of your business, that can leverage AWS Systems Manager, connect in, let you group resources, take actions, operations, deploy applications, do change management from a central location, regardless of where that actual infrastructure or systems are being deployed. One of the common use cases we see of that kind of an extension is ECS Anywhere, which is Edge Container Services. Through ECS Anywhere, you can centrally deploy, update containerized applications, have those en masse distributed out to, again, tens, hundreds, or thousands of locations. Very easy. And in the same way that your application development team would be used to doing this to push out to AWS or being push out to other public clouds for their application deployment. Another kind of equivalent, we talked about Azure File Sync. On AWS, the equivalent there would be AWS Storage Gateway, which actually is a nice virtual you can deploy as a virtual machine on premises. You can put it in any number of locations that you have, and it's all those same kinds of capabilities where it can expose, Windows file share interfaces, SMB, NFS, iSCSI even interfaces to provide what appears like infinite local edge-based storage capacity, but that's backed and synchronized up to AWS S3 storage, and then can leverage all the lifecycle management, the encryption, the security capabilities that you would get natively using S3 storage, for example. And finally, another kind of cloud extension example. Google, kind of the father of Kubernetes, offers their managed high value managed Kubernetes service that you can run run in the cloud. It's called Google Anthos. There is a version of that can be run on premises, deployed on virtual machines. And kind of what you see here in this user interface is this again. The point is let developers, let the infrastructure teams that know how to manage these systems not have to worry about where they're physically actually running. So in this case, the second cluster I see here is running natively in GKE. It's a 3-node cluster. I can see the resources. I can set policies, deploy applications, set up GitOps operators, whatever that I need. The same way I can do to this edge cluster that's actually running on premises and connected into Google, and still has access to all the managed high value Google Anthos services that are available there. And these are just examples. There's many other clouds. other type of hybrid cloud solutions we'll just run through, to mention at a high level. One of the common, hybrid cloud where you see portions of applications actually running in different pieces fall into the IoT or industrial IoT space. And most cloud providers and many application specific or industry specific clouds have their own versions, but Azure IoT is something you can easily deploy on premises, capture and gather and analyze data, machine data locally, do some local processing, stream that up to Azure IoT Cloud Hub services. AWS Greengrass is kind of the similar capability in the AWS ecosystem. So a lot of different hybrid cloud solutions focused around IoT, data management, so forth, that would extend all the way out to, again, many hundreds of edge locations and even, smaller devices that would come into play here as well. We also see a wide range of multi-cloud Kubernetes and container management systems that are out there. Just a few to name: Avasa, Portainer, IBM Edge Application Manager are several that we partner with. If you do look at, if you're looking at Kubernetes and you're not, you don't want to pick one of the cloud providers like Microsoft Azure, AKS, or Google Anthos, who, by the way, have their own hybrid cloud, where you can run AKS but run Kubernetes clusters managed on Google. If you want a more vendor neutral, there's a whole ecosystem of multi-cloud Kubernetes, independent cloud providers that can work with any of those public cloud ecosystems, can deploy on premises on SE platform, for example. We see a lot of interest, in those types of patterns. And then, other areas all around edge, AI, computer vision. It's very, very common model to see some type of cloud-based, and this could be, vendor specific. This could be more general, cloud-based training of, models, leveraging ML ops to push out new models across, fleets of, imagine, 10,000 retail stores that are doing customer detection or empty shelf detection or things like that, leveraging hybrid cloud to update those models, refine those models, push them out, use distributed ML ops type infrastructure to edge runtimes that are deployed in this, in the on-prem locations. And then, the other kind of area of, hybrid cloud applications or relate to securely remotely accessing resources, whether they're in public clouds, whether they're located on-prem. And some examples that, beyond the, remote access for IT that we showed would be things like Azure Application Proxy, where you can, through the Azure cloud, expose access to any on-premises application, distributed application that has a web interface. You can remote that securely, authenticate and provide access control through the Azure cloud without having to open up your VPN to let, even employees have access to those kinds of web-based applications. And then there's, similar kind of hybrid models when you get into VDI, desktop delivery, application streaming, any kind of end user compute, how you deliver desktops and applications in some type of hybrid type of model. And ultimately, I think the goal for everyone is to provide really cloud-like management and for distributed hybrid cloud computing, whether that's in 10 locations, whether that's in 10,000 locations. Provide a lot of the capabilities, API-driven, declarative, the security, all the things that you're used to and that teams are used to running and deploying applications in the cloud. Hide the underlying infrastructure, the hardware, the updates, all those things, turn those into a service that is, your application developers and teams don't have to worry about. The infrastructure teams, can control those centrally. And that's really the goal that we're looking to provide here at Scale Computing. And with that, let's see what questions we have.
All right. We actually have quite a few. So let's dive into it. How does that sound?
Great.
Okay, I'm gonna I got you excited and then now I'm pulling back, but I'm gonna throw up a poll just for everyone here. If you are in the audience and you're looking for a little bit of information from Scale Computing about their solution, click on in there about what you'd like: data sheet, white paper, case studies, pricing, demos, etc. This is your easy button, your wish list. So please let Scale know what you're looking for. And with that, so I've got quite a few questions. Let's dive in. First one I've got here is, what are some key considerations for ensuring governance and security across multiple clouds? Are there any industry standards or frameworks that organizations should definitely adhere to?
Oh, well, that's a broad question. I mean, there's definitely many best practices, and most companies are subject to very many general compliance requirements, whether it's SOC 2 compliance, ISO 27001, or often in very vertical or application specific compliance requirements that will set guidelines, audit policies, things like that for all information security, whether it's on-prem, so on and so forth. I mean, that's generally the place to start is what you're required to do. I think Dan covered a lot of just the high level things that you need to start with: identity management, access control, get those make sure those are bulletproof and locked down, and then go from there.
Right, that sounds good. Another one here I've got is, with the proliferation of cloud service providers, how do organizations choose the right combination to meet their specific needs? How would you go about that? And they mention they want to kind of minimize complexity and maximize flexibility.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And again, it's the answer is always it depends. I mean, a lot's going to depend on your vertical market need, your set of applications, your scope in terms of physical footprints, things like that. Also depends to some degree on what you consider a cloud provider. I mean, we work with an ecosystem of we would call managed service providers, but many of them provide some type of, software as a service or infrastructure as a service or platform as a service that may, apply to your particular vertical. They may be using scale computing under the hood that you wouldn't even necessarily know about. Selecting the goal, obviously, to minimize the number of vendors you have to deal with is one. I guess beyond that, the thing I would say is, stick with industry standards, portable types of deployment. So, virtual machines, for example, you can lift and shift a, Linux or Windows based virtual machine, move it around anywhere pretty easily, pretty freely, not necessarily gaining or losing any capability, but, it's a nice portable thing that you can move around and avoid a cloud lock-in. Same thing when you get into cloud native apps, containerized. I think you want to, where possible, avoid getting, into very, very into locked in type opinionated solutions. If you're deploying in terms of Kubernetes, for just as an example, I think you want to try to stay with utilizing resources, utilizing, operators, value added services that are easily transportable, as opposed to, very, very opinionated. If you are, again, looking to minimize your lock-in, and so forth. On the flip side, there are many cases where it's, you don't want to become experts. You want to just, deploy your applications, let somebody else worry about, all those details. And often it, makes sense to get, into a very, very opinionated solution, if that meets your needs and, as long as you understand what your eventual exit plan is.
Yeah, good points there. And mentioning that kind of, do you want to deploy on one cloud, move over and keep yourself nimble? What are maybe like pluses and minuses of that? When and why would you want to stay nimble and jump around in different environments, or when or why would you want to anchor yourself and just kind of commit to one? Again, a bit of a broad question, but.
Yeah. And again, it's going to depend on your company, your application. Often, there can be things from, you may find that, certain public clouds or specialized clouds, don't have the same geographic scope, aren't going to work necessarily in all of the regions that you might want to. So you might have to kind of pick and choose, what's the best of breed, in this particular region. Often network access, although when you get into the very big cloud vendors, that's generally not as much of a concern. But, if you have an application that is very, very network dependent, or you need something with, a lot of sites that are very close to, when we talk about edge, a lot of times, that often does mean, okay, we're running physical servers on-prem in a customer environment. But sometimes the edge is, a telco tower that's, a couple miles away, or, a data center that's cross town, but still low latency networking. And that can make a lot of choices in terms of why you might pick one particular cloud provider. Well, because these are the offices that I have, or these are the areas where my customers are accessing from, and who has the best geographic location, who has the best low latency network access. Sometimes those things don't matter for certain applications, and you can run them all in one big region, and all you're looking for is maybe geographic redundancy for major disasters, if you need to move your application from East Coast to West Coast, or things like that. So there could be a lot of different variables to consider there.
Right. Nice. And then maybe, I think we have time for maybe one or two final questions here, and then I'll let you free. But Here I've got someone asking, can you provide examples of specific tools or technologies that help streamline operations while maximizing the benefits of this multi-cloud? And I guess you could be general or more specific to scale and those tools that you pack.
Yeah. I mean, in general, I think, there's some pretty standard, things like, at scale and really everywhere, you want to automate, you want to leverage infrastructure and applications as code. So, you want to avoid, manual deployments, manual updates, anything that's, error prone, time consuming, things like that. And there are a lot of different tools depending on what you're utilizing. For the market segments that we serve, we found that actually Ansible tends to be kind of the best of everything. We've implemented our particular Ansible integration in a way that it kind of checks everything from initial configuration management at the infrastructure level to application deployment to even, day two updates, application updates, so on and so forth. And it's a great tool for orchestrating whatever other kinds of integrations you need. I mean, real world example, just today I was working with the Azure Ansible collection to automate, a complete end-to-end deployment of defining a new application in Azure that I then want to, register my on-prem application to, and turning that all into a single, infrastructure as code pipeline, kind of along with the infrastructure as code, whatever label you put on it, some kind of GitOps methodology where you're taking that code, you're version controlling it, you're checking in changes with an approval process, with some automated testing so that you can make changes securely. They go through, security checks, sanity checks, internal testing can be rolled out across, again, if you're assuming distributed systems, and, we very commonly are dealing with, tens and thousands of end sites. So you need to be very careful on how you deploy make changes at that scale. How you monitor those, how you roll back, things if there are, inadvertent changes that accidentally get through. So those would be some of the key things, but there's a lot of different tools. They have, pros and cons. Most of the different toolings, it's not really an either or. They can work together. I know many people who are big Terraform fans, and Terraform makes a ton of sense. I think cloud where you can kind of maintain states and so forth, but Terraform can also call your Ansible and vice versa. And so just depending on your needs, depending on how dynamic your environment is, that can make a lot of, that can, dictate a lot what kinds of tools you use, what's best for your environment. And then sometimes it does just come down to skill sets of what you're used to, maybe what you already, again, we try to leverage, how did you, if you're already deploying these things successfully in the cloud or on premises now, and you need to change those locations, how can we keep as much of what you've already built, used, and so forth, and just change the infrastructure underneath? Because ultimately that's, kind of the boring stuff. That's what you care about. And, that's what you don't want to have to care about versus getting your applications deployed, updated, patched, all those kinds of things.
Incredible. No, that's really helpful. And I think that kind of gives a lot to think about, but some really good specific examples of how you're using, these instances and how others might too. So with that though, David, I think we are at time. So my last little question to you is always, where should people go? What's the first step if they want to get started with scale or learn a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah, I know we attached a resource here that talks, specifically about, some of the multi-cloud integrations with Azure and a little more detail than what I went through. Certainly welcome you to go to, scalecomputing.com, check out our solution overall, and, reach out if you have, specific needs we can help you with.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to let you go, but I really appreciate you taking your time to be here today.
Thank you.
Ready. Take good care, David. All right. And with that, David did mention this already, but in the handouts tab, you will see that we do have the tech brief in PDF. So it's the hybrid cloud services with SC platform, well, Scale Computing Platform and Azure. So definitely check that out. It's PDF, 3 pages, easy peasy read, and we'll give you a little more info than was covered today. It'll be a great way to follow up on the convo we just had with David. And with that, I am going to give away a couple more prizes. We have 2 more Amazon gift cards to give away. Again, you do need to be present to win. So let's hope our final winners are indeed still here. So give a little drum roll, please, for Zach Wheeler from Iowa. Congratulations, Zach. And also Maria Baird from Arizona. Huge congrats to all 3 of our winners today. Just to recap, if you missed it, if you're on a bio break, we've got Randall Kaiser from Michigan, Zach Wheeler from Iowa, Maria Baird from Arizona. And as always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar. Plus, those 2 best question gift cards from each session, or the one from each session, rather, that you could win if you did, in fact, send in a question. With that, if you are on the webinar today and you would like to chat with us about presenting on a future summit, EcoCast, or MegaCast webinar, we would love to hear from you. You can reach out via email at connect@actualtechmedia.com. And if you are looking to join another event in the near future, we have Protecting SaaS Applications, Security and Data Protection Considerations on Thursday, April 4th, which is tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern or 9 a.m. Pacific. We've got a good grouping there with Zerto, Rubrik, Haiku, Hewlett-Packard Enterprises, and more. So definitely sign up and check that out. And again, a special thank you to all of you for being here today, for attending, for asking some really great questions. I've had so much fun with you all talking about multi-cloud environments. I hope that you've gotten some interesting tips and ideas, and maybe you're leaving feeling excited, ready to take some next steps. If so, great, mission accomplished. Hope you had a really great time. And with that, I'm going to let you go. I hope to see you all again soon. And until then, have an absolutely magical day. Thanks a lot.